Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's the Monday show on a Wednesday as me, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Mark Crothers, reflect on a 2-2 draw for Newcastle United against Tottenham. Newcastle were twice in the lead, but were unable to see out the game as Cristiano Romero scored a brace for the visitors. A night of frustration where, despite some nice passage of play for Eddie Howe's men, it really just seemed they struggled to get out of first gear. It's now 11 points thrown away by Newcastle United from winning positions in the Premier League this campaign. We'll look back on the game and our feelings on it. As always, a huge thanks to NORD VPN for sponsoring the show. Click the link in the podcast description box to take advantage of a discounted offer. One subscription can be used across 10 devices, and there's no risk with NORD's 30-day money-back guarantee. Mark, welcome back. You all good?
I am good. Nice little walk through town on my way here. As we said on Monday, feeling festive.
How early did you get into town? Because when I was driving in, it looked like something from a Hollywood movie, like a Batman movie, because the fog had rolled in, the sun was up, but you couldn't fully see it. It was just see this little circle in the sky.
It was nice. No, it was. I came straight from the school run, straight into town, so it was in fairly early. But yeah, it's town's looking good this morning, isn't it?
Lovely. How's your Christmas tree doing?
It's doing all right. Yeah, dog hasn't pulled it down yet, which is a big plus.
Mine nearly went yesterday. I literally got in, went with my little girl, picked up early from nursery because I was heading to the match. Got there, and as I knelt down to water it, I didn't knock the tree down. It just tipped. So there's me, one-handed, holding onto the tree, trying to keep it up. Have text my neighbour and say, "Can you come round and help us?" Because the missus is still at work, and my little one's trying to pull the baubles off the tree. It was very nearly a disaster. We saved it though. It's all good. It's still standing. The lights are twinkling. We couldn't say the same about Newcastle's end result against Spurs though.
Good segue.
It's
good.
Almost like we do this every single week, isn't it? They take the lead, do Newcastle through Bruno Guimaraes before Romero equalises. Gordon then finishes a penalty. But yet again, Romero pops up at the Leaders end. The game finishes 2-2. We're going to talk about every single one of the big talking points. But just give me your general feeling on the performance and the result.
I think it's purely summed up in one word, which is frustration.
I think it was summed up in your sigh.
The sigh maybe did it, yeah. I felt as if Newcastle first half were really, really good in 2/3 of the pitch. And it was just the final third where it hadn't clicked. I thought defensively they were really solid. First half, midfield, controlled the midfield for large parts of that first half. That sort of spilled over into the second half. It always felt as if it was going to be something special or a mistake that would open the score. And obviously, it's a brilliant finish from Bruno. You know, he's done a couple of those this season, and it just shows how important he is to this Newcastle side, which I know is a really obvious thing to say as captain, but in terms of their playing style and just being able to open someone up. The goals they conceded, though, just frustrating. Just the first one is Dan Burn allowing Romero to get across him far, far too easily. I thought the cross came in too easily as well. And then, I mean, the second equaliser, it's the worst overhead kick you'll ever see in your life. Well, successful one, I should say. Yeah, it was annoying. It was frustrating. The one thing I'll say is it does seem to, those emotions seem to be matched by the player reactions. So they know that they've let it slip.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Bruno's reaction towards the end of the show. Let's go right back to the start of the evening then, and we'll talk about the team, because it was another huge talking point. Would he go and change? Would he rotate with Burnley on the horizon? In the end, Anthony Elanga was out. Bruno was out. Two changes which did surprise me. I felt this game was perfect for Anthony Elanga. I felt his speed would really hurt Tottenham. He's on a high after a decent enough performance against Everton, and I felt as well as you want in the team to have that momentum, you need these individuals who've maybe been on the fringes of the first team and haven't performed, and you want those to carry on the momentum. So it felt to me like Elanga really, as I said earlier in the week, should have been one of the names that were first on the team sheet, and then Bruno, I was a little bit surprised because I thought he would drop out at Everton, and when that didn't happen, I was like, he's in for the foreseeable. Clearly does need a rest. It happened, and I think he had to bring him on a lot sooner than he thought. What did you make of the team news?
Going back to what we said on Monday, obviously they'll have a lot of information on recovery and stuff like that. So you wonder if the decision was made off the back of that with Elanga. That said, I'm very much so if he's fit enough that he plays, because it's been a difficult start to life at Newcastle for Anthony Elanga, and Saturday was a much needed positive. And I just put myself in his mind of, there'll be conversations will have taken place about why he didn't play last night. But I still wonder if he's been waiting for this positive moment, and then it comes, and then he's sat on the bench against a Tottenham side that you can't get at them at St James's Park. We know that. We know that from past games. We know that from this season. The Bruno one, I actually thought he would drop out against Burnley because it feels like the more this could bite me in the backside, but the more winnable game, certainly against a struggling side at the wrong end of the league. So I thought that might be the one where he drops out. Yeah, I agree. I was surprised with both.
I think the issue with Elanga is then he's introduced late in the game. Things haven't quite gone to plan. And then he comes on, and nearly every pass he makes, nearly every decision that he makes last night was the wrong one. He then ends up fouling someone when Newcastle are trying to go and get a winner. And then instantly everyone's on his back on social media. People are talking about him being a waste of money and what's going on, etc., etc. I think by putting him in that position, you erode what little faith people had in him after Saturday. I still think he's going to come good. But I just think it was maybe the wrong decision, both in terms of a footballing perspective, in terms of what he could give Newcastle against Spurs, but also for him individually, because now, he gets the chance against Burnley, which I think will probably be a harder game for him to do so. He's got to kind of start from nothing again after that great performance against Everton. Well, great performance is being a bit too kind, good performance.
And it's also overshadowed what was a poor performance from the player that he replaced when he came on. Because I thought Jacob Murphy was really poor last night. A lot of his decision making should be questioned as well. But yeah, I thought Elanga, just wrong decision making, wrong sort of wasted key moments. Didn't look as keen to get at his man as he did on Saturday at Everton. I think he should start against Burnley. I agree it'll be a tougher game in terms of the way their fullbacks play. But I still maintain that he will come good. I don't buy into the waste of money thing just yet. I think he's got a lot to give. I think he's got the trust, I think, of Eddie Howe has grown since Saturday. Admittedly, it may not seem that way because he didn't play him last night, but I think he does trust him and does believe that he will come good. And I think hopefully that process will restart, should we say, on Saturday against Burnley.
First half, for me, felt a little bit strange. I thought the atmosphere was a little bit flat last night. The whole night just felt a little bit flat, to be totally honest. They had their opportunities in the first 45. Lewis Miley fires at the goalkeeper. Probably should do a little bit better. Comes to him quite quickly. It's on target, but it's a comfortable save in the end. And Joelinton hits the post. But Newcastle were in control of that first half. 58% possession. 8 efforts on goal, with Spurs having none. 214 accurate passes from 244. But it just felt like they never made the dominance pay in that first half, especially.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the oldest phrases in football, isn't it? You've got to score when you're on top, and they didn't do that. And I thought there was at times in the first half where I thought Newcastle could run away with this if they can get a goal. But until Joelinton hit the post, I never really felt as if they were going to score. But this is what I meant when I said earlier about they were good in 2/3 of the pitch. It was just the final third didn't quite click. Harvey Barnes had some promising moments, but didn't look like the Harvey Barnes we've seen in recent weeks. And as we've said, Jacob Murphy, or as I've said, I thought was really poor on the night. So that final third, Nick Voltemora as well, having to come deep, but then didn't have any support when he got the ball. So he gave the ball away a few times, but I thought that was mainly because he just didn't have options because there wasn't movement around him. So, it was there were really promising moments. There were really positive moments in the first half. But again, until Joelinton hit the post, which was 2-3 minutes before half time, didn't really feel as if they were going to score.
Just felt, like I said in the introduction, that they never really got out of first gear. on one hand, to me, watching them play, it looked like they were lacking a little bit of confidence and belief in themselves. And on the other hand, it was like they were playing where time wasn't going to run out, that they just keep playing until they scored. And obviously, that's not the way it works. Second half, we see Bruno come on at half time. He grabs the opener. He really changes the dynamic of the game, doesn't he? There's a bit more drive and a bit more purpose, a bit more passion in the side once he comes off the bench.
I didn't think it was just that, though. I thought it was the way that his movement of the ball kind of opened Spurs up a bit. So there were times in the first half where if one of the midfielders had it, it would go to the fullback and then to the winger. And, instead of doing that, Bruno sees the direct pass and it just opens the game up and moves Newcastle forward a little bit quicker. I thought that's what he did really well, but his goal it's a sensational finish. And I mean, I must admit, when I first saw it, I thought it's taking a deflection, but when you go back and watch it back, it's just such a good strike. It's a brilliant strike. And as I say, he's done it a couple of times this season already. I think it's his best goal scoring season he's had for a long time. And it just underlines his importance, not as captain, but as a player, as a midfielder in this Newcastle team.
It was a thing of beauty, that goal. It really, really was. But it comes with a side of frustration as well. It is a really good team goal. Getting down the flank, Gordon into Voldemort, that little touch off to Bruno. That's kind of Newcastle at their best under Eddie Howe. That pace, that precision. But we didn't see that enough last night. We saw it in maybe 3 or 4 examples, especially getting down the flanks, where you could just tell the fullbacks did not want the foot race. You saw Gordon coming off the bench and his pace to get up his side, and he just absolutely burns he burns 2 Spurs defenders into getting the ball into the box. And I loved the goal, celebrated it widely. You watch back on replay, you think absolutely brilliant. But then I'm sitting there and thinking, why didn't we see more of that? Why didn't the ball then go to Gordon time after time? Why didn't it go over to Elanga? Not kind of the same thing, but kind of the same thing with that pace. And it just felt like right there and then, and this is through the entirety of the game, even before Gordon gets introduced to the pitch, we saw Spurs struggling with the pace down the flanks, and yet Newcastle United just didn't seem to capitalise on that enough at all.
No, I 100% agree with that. It's about keeping your opponent pinned and keeping them in, and I think Anthony Gordon and Anthony Elanga would be able to do that. I thought Gordon was excellent when he came on. When he had the ball, every time he got it, you thought he's going to do something here. And that's kind of when Anthony Gordon's at his unpredictable best. Now, there's possibly a conversation we'll have soon about, does he come back in to start on Saturday? I think there's probably an argument maybe he should.
There's potentially an argument that actually Harvey Barnes should go on the right and Gordon on the left, or vice versa.
Yeah, I'm not sure that gives you the balance that you need. I think it's got to be one or the other on the left, and then Murphy or Elanga on the right.
I mean, there's also a chance, and I hate to say this, Gordon could potentially start up front because as Nick Voldemort got another 90 minutes in the tank.
I think that happens against Leverkusen. I've got to be honest.
He's done it before, hasn't he, like that?
Yeah. So
he's done it before.
Yeah. Sorry, Did
Gordon,
against Marseille, of course. I think that's when that may happen. I thought that was frustrating, the fact that you could see Gordon had his man beaten, and every time he got the ball, you could see his man dropping off, and that allowed Newcastle to push further forward, and then it just stopped, and that's when Spurs came back into the game. And obviously we're going to talk about the defending on the first and second goals, but it's annoying that Newcastle have let what seemed as if it was on its way to being a kind of routine 3 points, have let that slip.
Yeah, because you've got a Spurs side who are coming here. They lose this game. It's 6 defeats in 8. There's pressure on Thomas Frank. There's a discord between the fan base, the ownership, and the manager. I know a lot of Spurs fans aren't convinced that Thomas Frank is the man to lead them forward. Reportedly, there's disunity within the camp because people are a little bit confused about their roles. And yesterday was really the perfect opportunity for Newcastle United to really kick on against a Spurs side who I think were there for the taking. They've scored 2 goals, but they've done little else through the entirety of the game. And Newcastle United should have kicked on from grabbing that first goal, and they just didn't. It took 7 minutes Christian Romero to get the equaliser. And as good as Lewis Hall was, I thought, especially in the opening half an hour, 35 minutes, he was good going forward. But Kudus didn't have too much bother against him. I don't think. I think Kudus did really well against him, actually, and especially for this cross, this assist for the first Romero goal. Lewis Hall does not want to get tight to him, so he gives him the space, and you can't do that with a man like Kudus. He will put that ball in the box if you give him an inch, and it was a wonderful, wonderful cross. And then Dan Burns just nowhere near Romero, and it's a good header. It's a brave header, but really that should be stopped by Lewis Hall. And if it's not, Dan Burns got to be quicker. He's got to react to it. The ball goes into the back of the net. Really, really frustrating goal to concede.
So I think the seeds of that cross were sown in the first half when Hall did get close to Kudus and he got spun. And Kudus got in behind on the right-hand side. So I just wonder if that moment, even though it's just a moment in the game, split second in a 90 minutes, I do wonder if that was playing on Lewis Hall's mind, where he thought, right, I've got to stand off a little bit just so I don't get beaten in behind. But as a result of that, there is too much time given to, and you said it there, you can't give a player like Kudus that amount of time because he will harm you. He will threaten. It's a great cross. It's a great header, but again, yeah, Dan Burn just on his toes a little bit, on his heels, I should say, and kind of, not going to say out-muscled because he wasn't out-muscled, but sort of just beaten to the ball too easily for me. It's just not a great goal. One of my mates watching it said that he thought Aaron Ramsdale should have done better, but I don't agree on that one because the reaction time between the header and the ball going in, it's minimal. So, yeah, it's an annoying goal again. I keep using that word annoying, but it is because it felt as if it was completely avoidable.
It was. I agree with you. Ramsdale could do little about that. The issue comes with the defence. And it's that old saying, you're most vulnerable after you've scored a goal, and Newcastle United were. And then they get a second through a penalty. Now, this has caused some debate. If I'm honest, Mark, I've got absolutely zero issue with it. Bentancur is all over Dan Burn, and Dan Burn is just really clever. He's played to the VAR rulebook, and it's worked. I felt in this game, Newcastle were too nice. As I've said, Spurs are here, down on the luck, manager under pressure, and Newcastle, instead of kicking them when they're down, are closer to picking them up and giving them a lovely little cuddle. There wasn't that nasty bite to them. Yeah. Now, Burn, this isn't a nasty bit of play. It's just clever, but it's part of that kind of S-housery that Newcastle United were famous for once upon a time, Eddie Howe, and has been lacking in recent months. If you're an elite side with elite players, with an elite train of thought, then this is what you do. You try every trick of the book to get ahead. And yeah, as a general football fan, you will probably say it's not a penalty. You probably say it's soft. You probably say Dan Burn's got as much as Bentancur's got as him. At the end of the day, Dan Burn has worked that. He's conned the penalty in the eyes of many. I've got no issue with it. It forms that part of what you need to be an elite side. You get ahead no matter what.
So I said this after the game that I thought it was soft. No, I didn't think it was soft because of the foul. I think it's soft because of the lack of consistency. And this is my big problem with officiating in the Premier League this season. It's the lack of consistency across decision making. Now, if you are going to give that penalty, right or wrong, you have to give it for everything that goes on like that. You look at Bentancur kind of condemns himself because he's not even looking at the ball. He's not even looking at the ball. He's got his back to it. He's got Burn. Yes, Dan's all over him as well, by the way. It's a battle for the ball, but then one of them is looking at the ball. So I think it's because of that. But yeah, I think the reason why I sort of said maybe it shouldn't have been a penalty was because of the fact that that isn't given all the time, which is, I think if it was given against Newcastle, you would be like, unhappy about that. But I do think if you are going to eradicate this sort of thing, this blatant holding in the area, then these kind of indiscretions should be pulled up more in games. That was why I thought it wasn't a penalty.
Let us know in the comments your thoughts. Then Anthony Gordon takes the penalty. It's a really good finish. Yeah. But from then, it's felt like Newcastle were just trying to maintain the lead rather than add to it. I don't know about you. Even as early as the first half, when Joelinton hits the post, I'm sitting there thinking, I feel like this is going to go the way it did Newcastle United on top, and they're either going to lose to a scrappy goal or they're going to, ultimately throw it away at the end. I don't know what it was. I just had that kind of feeling within us. Maybe it's because I felt so confident pre-game that Newcastle would win and should win. That I always feel Newcastle are out to prove me wrong. As that penalty goes in, Spurs are in a position where they need to go for it. They need to throw everything at it. They're going to go up the attack. Newcastle score. They're going to go up the pitch. But in the end, they didn't really test Ramsdale too much, but they were trying. And I think Newcastle, instead of seeing that and using that to their advantage, where you contain them to a certain degree within your back line and then you hit them on the pace, on the counter with that pace, they kind of just sat off. And then the introduction of Fabian Schär, I don't think helps the situation at all. If anything, I think it gives encouragement to Tottenham. On one hand, I'm kind of torn because you want to protect the lead. I get it. We all think back to the game against AC Milan, and we look back and say, what was Eddie Howe doing there? He's got to protect it. But here, you've got a side that are literally going to throw everything at you, who can't keep up with the pace of your wingers, with your midfield. Is bringing Fabian Schär on really the right decision? Or did that just add to Spurs' encouragement that they could go out and get a second goal?
I sort of understand why he did it. But at the same time, I think at times with Newcastle, attacks the best form of defence. So instead of trying to sit out what we knew was going to be a long period of injury time, just keep going at them. Just keep trying, because Spurs are going to go forward. So that's going to leave space Newcastle can exploit. And I think the substitute sends two messages. One to Spurs to say, right, Newcastle are sitting in here. They're going to try and see it out because they've brought on a third centre-back. And at the same time, it probably sends out a message to the Newcastle players of the same thing. Your first focus now is sitting back and seeing out this game. You're just kind of inviting Spurs on to a degree. Now, maybe you could have brought on another midfielder or, swap. Maybe Voldemort comes off and you get a bit more pace up front and try and hit them with pace on the break. I thought it was a little bit of an unnecessary substitution. I didn't feel as if the two centre-backs were being overly threatened by Spurs. It felt like an obvious managerial decision to make to bring on another centre-back, but at the same time, I just wonder if Newcastle, being in the ascendancy, being on the front foot, would have helped them see out that game in Spurs' half rather than inviting Spurs into Newcastle's half.
And part of me wonders as well, you've got a new goalkeeper in net. It's going to take time to organise his defence. He's got to work with them in that in-game scenario. He's bringing another defender on, not just kind of muddying the water slightly. More bodies in the box. I don't know. I can understand why he did it, but I don't necessarily think it was the right decision, because ultimately you just send out the message, like you say, we're sitting back here, we're going to try and contain, when really the space is there to be exploited. And yet Newcastle have lost, Miley off, he's come off, you put Ramsey on instead of him. It maybe gives you that little bit of a speed. And we go up to the goal. It's shocking defending, isn't it, really? And that's kind of got nothing to do with substitutions. It's just really poor defending. I say an overhead kick. It's an overhead shin from Romero. Goes through 4 Newcastle United players, and then you can argue Ramsdale is very much in the wrong position. He sees it late. From his point of view, you might say there's bodies in front. That's why he sees it relatively late. He's still in a really poor position after punching the ball out. I mean, if you're Eddie Howe, I'm not sure you want to watch it back, because I reckon something might be going through the television screen.
I can guarantee we'll be watching it back, and we'll be watching it back several times over. It's just poor all round. From the minute, Newcastle sort of conceded the corner, everything just sort of felt a bit all over the place. They cleared it to an extent. I didn't feel as if Romero was closed down quick enough. He was kind of, nobody thought he was going to get any contact on it, I guess. A centre-back doing an overhead kick doesn't necessarily happen a lot, but he should be closed down. He should be blocked off. And then once he makes whatever sort of connection it was, it just bobbles in. It's horrible. I think Ramsdale should do better. I think the defenders who were in between the goal and Romero should do better. I think there's possibly an argument to say if he connects with it properly, he doesn't score. because I think Newcastle would react to that. It's the fact that he shinned it has maybe just put people off balance a little bit. So yeah, it's again, I'll go back to the word I keep using, but it's frustrating. Simple as that, because again, it is completely avoidable.
Two ways to look at this game overall then. If someone offers you 7 points from Man City, Everton and Spurs, you're taking that all day long. However, given the fact that Spurs were in disarray, looked like a bang average Premier League side who were on the edge throughout, you think a second goal probably tips them over the edge, i.e. they haven't scored the equaliser. I don't think the argument that, you take 7 points washes at all. And I'm incredibly frustrated at that second half performance, because Newcastle United had the chance here to get up the table. They'd be on 21 points, which makes the table look a lot rosier. They'll be into the top half. They keep the momentum going ahead of a massive week, big 3 games coming up. And I think Bruno said it best, it feels like a defeat. And when you go into the dressing room with that feeling, I mean, you would say it might be a good thing because you get the reaction in the next game, but also I think it's not a good thing because that means the players are feeling down. And I think there's a question whether they do get that reaction on Saturday.
They have to show reaction, and I think the reaction after the game last night shows how high the frustration levels are. We saw sort of coming together between sets of players. I think it shows that Newcastle know that they've let it slip. They know that they've made mistakes. They know that they're on the levels they need to reach. So they have to show reaction. If they don't, then there will be questions asked. I don't think Saturday's a gimme. I think Burnley, they can be organised. They can be hard to break down. They may well come and sit in and try and hit Newcastle on the break. So that's why I think maybe bringing in a Gordon, certainly starting Bruno, will give them something to open Burnley up. But it's by no means a gimme. Newcastle have to go and control that game, dictate how it goes, get themselves in front early and go on and win well.
Well, we've got a lot of people in the comments watching live talking about Anthony Gordon. Darren says Gordon did look better last night. Les agrees 100%. Gordon seemed to be running with freedom as opposed to carrying that hip injury. So fingers crossed, if he does get the nod on Saturday, we can see the very best of Gordon. And he says we always take an extra pass when we have a chance. It's like Cloughie used to say, don't make a good chance a bad chance, but trying to make it a great chance. This is what we do all the time. And I felt, especially in the first half, down the right, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of back and forth between Tino and Jacob Murphy, as opposed to just getting the ball into the box, which is what they did kind of against Everton. They made sure they got the crosses in, what they did against City as well. Whereas here they seemed to want to take that extra pass, and it was frustrating watching that happen. As we said in the introduction, Mark, it's 11 points dropped from winning positions in the Premier League, and that doesn't include some of the points dropped while Newcastle United have got back in to the game, having gone behind. And you think that Liverpool game, for example, focus on that 11 points dropped, they'd be top of the Premier League if they just managed to hold on to those 11 points. Now that, look, it's said a little bit in jest. I mean, it's factually correct. It would be top of the Premier League. I mean, something isn't right there, is it? Is it mentality? Is it organisation, discipline, tactics, approach? I mean, 11 points from winning positions. It's a scary number. And I think the biggest concern is that you can't see that changing. If they take the lead against Burnley and lose it, there'll be anger and frustration. But I think the overall feeling of losing a game after going ahead, there wouldn't be too much shock about it.
So all the things you mentioned, the organisation, the mindset, all that, I think it's just a little bit of everything at the minute. It doesn't feel comfortable being a Newcastle player at the moment. I don't feel as if Saturday was brilliant, but they needed a win last night to build on that and really start building momentum. Yes, the recent record's not too bad in terms of games unbeaten, but at the same time, I don't feel as if there's a massive amount of momentum. And I feel that happens in games as well. So even when they get ahead, I don't feel as if they have massive momentum they can take on in a game. So when they got the first and the first one last night with Bruno, as you said earlier, they didn't really go and attack and try and get a second. It was kind of, we set off for a bit and then they got punished by the Romero goal. I don't think it's not necessarily a lack of confidence. I just feel as if they've got a lot playing on their minds at the moment, and that's kind of hampering them in their attempts to try and build on a lead. Because everything, once we got that first one last night, in my head I'm saying, right, let's go and really go and push forwards and go and get a second, and have that mindset, that positive mindset. But it just felt as if something was holding them back.
I mean, I'd love to know what the answer is. I'm sure I would as well, because again, I mean, I've said this previously, I don't think the instruction is to save back, but something is holding them back from going out and getting another goal. And people will be asking, whether the Man City performance, whether the Everton performance, is that the exception to the rule this season for Newcastle United?
It's a valid question to ask. They have to find consistency if they want to do what they do. Bruno's obviously said after the game, that they see themselves as a potential top 4, top 5 side. You ain't going to be that without consistency, and I think that's where this season has been so frustrating. We're going to say all the events of the summer have played a part, and the late incomings and the outgoings and the situation with Alexander Isak. But we're now we are in December now. We need to start getting towards finding this consistent run that they found at the same time last season after Brentford, where they went on a 9-10 game unbeaten run that pushed them into the Carabao Cup semi-final, that got them into the sort of top 4 and 5 of the Premier League. That's what the challenge is now. And I look at the fixtures that they've got between now and the end of January, and there's some horrible ones in there. But I'd also argue this is where Newcastle tend to turn up, in the horrible fixtures where you think they're not going to get anything here, and then all of a sudden they'll do that. But then at the same time, they then waste big opportunities like last night. It's becoming one of the most frustrating half seasons I can remember in all of my time watching Newcastle and working within the media, and it's just, I feel as if we're constantly asking for a little bit more from them, without the confidence that that's going to be delivered. Now, momentum is a massive thing in football, and I look at last season and qualifying for the Champions League and winning a major domestic trophy for the first time in 70 years, and going into the summer, and I'm sure you were the same, and everyone watching was the same. You're thinking, right, go and attack the transfer market, go and build on the momentum you've got, and go and attack this season. And I feel as if they were kind of on the back foot straight away because of the likes of the Paul Mitchell departure and all that sort of stuff going on. Yes, the Isak situation, but I always felt as if Newcastle were fighting an uphill battle throughout, and I think that spilled into this season. And I still feel it now, even bringing it down from the bigger picture to individual games. I feel as if every game is an uphill battle for them, even when they're in control.
Yeah, a few games have felt comfortable. You used that word earlier in the show, and I think that's the perfect way to kind of sum it up. It just hasn't felt comfortable this season. That game last night didn't feel comfortable. Even when they got the lead, you're kind of still sitting there thinking, the way this is going, Spurs are going to get back into it. Big game on Saturday. It's a must win. Newcastle United have ambitions to get into that top 4, as Bruno has said. Then there's no excuses on Saturday. It will be a tough test. The rotation probably doesn't help, but it's necessary. Obviously, what comes after is also maybe a bit of a distraction for some. But we focus on Saturday, especially after the result last night. They need to go out there and they need to win this game to move up the table. But also, that momentum is so key. Momentum. That's the buzzword in my head. And so far this season, it's been very stop-start. They need to get that win on Saturday.
Would you agree that just a win isn't good enough? Or is it? Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Just a win on Saturday isn't necessarily what they need. It needs to be a good performance as well.
I think a win is as simple as this sounds, as daft as it sounds, is half the need. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's a poor performance, then the win can still be that motivation they have to kick on. Yes, a good performance, a one where they run absolutely wild and everything clicks. Fantastic, brilliant. But we've seen that at times this season where they've been brilliant and the next game they're not. So I don't necessarily think a good performance alongside a win is the kickstart that will get their season going. So let's get the win first, and whatever comes along with it, fantastic. And in an ideal world, yes, a perfect performance would be that motivation, would be the catalyst. But I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure it will be.
So I would slightly disagree. I think they have to put a good performance in as well. I think they have to go and dominate that game. I think if they come through the scrappy 1-0 or 2-1, there will still be questions to be asked. I think it has to be where they go and dictate that game and, play very, very well, do all the things that we know they can do, be intense, show that intense, that work rate, that passion, everything, get the ball out wide, use the pace they've got in wide positions, get Voldemort into good positions and work off him. I think it has to be a good performance as well, just to send them into a big week. And yes, we can talk about the derby, but Leverkusen away, we can't overlook that one because that's a big game in terms of trying to get into the knockout stages of the Champions League. We can't allow the derby to overshadow what are two very big games coming before it. I just feel as if that's kind of why we need to go into Leverkusen on the back of a good win and a good performance.
Certainly so. A lot of people in the comments watching live agreeing with your take on the summer, Mark. Nick Voldemort looked particularly shattered towards the end. Sean Neves on the bench. You watch him more than most. I've mentioned this before. The kid is clearly not ready for that level of responsibility. However, when Voldemort has literally got nothing left to give, will you not be in a better position just to put someone on like Sean Neves for the last 10, 15 minutes and give you just something, anything? Because bless Nick, he was ready for his bed.
I think most of us were given the kickoff time and the amount of injury time as well. I think I texted you on Saturday, didn't I? And I said with 20 minutes left when they were 4-1 up or 4-0 up against Everton, I think I would have got Sean Neves on then, because I think that's the right scenario to put on a very, very young striker where he can go and run around and he can go and probably get chances, given the sort of striker that he is. I'm not sure that, even given what you're saying quite correctly, I don't feel as if it would have been the situation to put him into. The change I could have seen, and this will be unpopular because we know what people think about Anthony Gordon playing up top or Alanga, may have been to push them into a central role just to use their energy at the top end of the pitch. But then we go back to the changes, as we said earlier. I'm not sure I would have made the changes that Eddie did make. So Neves' chance will come. He has got something. I keep saying this about him. I'm just not sure he's quite ready yet. I think the return of Johan Wissa, which we haven't discussed, does sound as if it's, I'm not going to say imminent because I feel as if it's been close for about 3 months now. But
when he was asked about him potentially, this is Wissa, by the way, potentially returning on Saturday, and he said, we'll see. So, I mean, he said things like this before, and then he's not there. It wouldn't surprise you if he's not there. It wouldn't surprise you if he is there. I mean, he's clearly not going to start on Saturday. But I think just having him on the bench would be a massive, massive boost. And the bigger picture is just having him here. He's not going to the African Cup of Nations is massive because Nick Voldemort needs that competition, but he also needs the chance to come off the pitch when it's not working, or indeed like last night where he's absolutely shattered because he put everything into his performance.
Look, let's be honest, Nick Voldemort he's been a great signing, and he's shown everything that we hoped he could be and a little bit more as well. His goal on Saturday completely summed him up. But he's still settling life in the Premier League. He's still settling into the intensity that the Premier League has. And he's had to carry the brunt of the attack and threat on his own. At a forward line that hasn't quite clicked at times. I spoke about earlier about how he loves to drop off. That's his natural game, dropping off and bringing people into the game. But our wingers and midfielders haven't given him that support. certainly haven't done it on a consistent basis. They did it on Saturday, as we discussed on the Monday show. I think Wissa, I don't want to compare him to the players effectively replacing and the one that left in the summer, but he is kind of more in that mold of, you will do the kind of job that he did, that Isak did. I wonder if it may bring Newcastle back towards where they feel they're at the best, having a striker like Wissa at the top end of the pitch. And that's no slight on Nick Voltemade at all, because I think there is still very much a massive role for him in this team. But I do wonder if Wissa may just take them back towards a natural Newcastle side.
So what do you do then? You take a man out of the midfield and you have Voldemort is at number 10?
No, I think at the moment I would rest Voltemade. I mean, I'm not saying I would start Wissa on Saturday. He's clearly not going to be ready for that, no matter what anyone says.
Just the game after that.
Well, by Leverkusen. There will be a time when he will start, but I don't think it'll be for a couple of weeks. So you probably, what he does offer you if he's on the bench is you can bring Voltemade off at half time or after an hour, but certainly not with 10 minutes remaining, or just leave him out then and kind of flog him to an extent. So I'm looking forward to seeing Wissa back. As I say, I think he'll give Newcastle a little bit more of a natural striker. I wouldn't rule out the fact he could play in a number of positions this season, maybe possibly out wide, or as you alluded to there, with Voltemade dropping into a 10 role with Wissa as more of a natural 9. To answer your question, yes, that would mean dropping a midfielder. I think there will be games when they can do that. If they get a favourable cup draw, which FA Cup draw, maybe they could try and test that against an opposition that, as long as they get a good draw, that he could go up against and try it. So I think there are possibilities, but what I will say is that his return and the news that he's not going to the AFCON, it's massive for Newcastle's season.
Definitely is. Final question then, Mark. Are Spurs the most dislikable team in the Premier League?
No.
Unlikable team?
No.
Even with Romero and Richarlison?
Romero is, look, we've had these at Newcastle.
Do you know what, though? I agree we have, but I would make a strong bet that even Spurs fans don't like Romero.
I'll say this. If he's in Newcastle's side, we love him.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know about that.
No, I think we do. I think we love that niggly player. We love that. I know where you're coming from, 100%.
And that goalkeeper, he's one as well. He's a wind-up merchant.
Honestly, didn't know what you were going to say there.
But family show, Mark.
It is family show, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's probably still reeling from what he did at the weekend. But no, there are, I'm not going to name them. I'll let people in the comments say that. But there are a lot of more dislikable sides in the Premier League than Spurs. I actually like Thomas Frank, by the way. I think he will go on and do a good job there, no matter what Spurs fans are saying. I think he made Brentford into a very, very good Premier League team. Thankfully, with players like Wissa, who hopefully we can do the same with Wissa here. No, I think Spurs have a number of very good players. The most annoying thing about them last night was that they didn't do what they normally do at St James's, which is absolutely capitulate. But no, that's the short answer.
Well, there we go. Let us know who your most unlikable Premier League side is. Be intrigued to see your answer in the comments. Brighton.
Do you say likable?
No, unlikable.
Unlikable. Okay.
I didn't. Unlikable. The one you don't like very much at all. Yeah, Spurs is definitely there for me.
There's a good chance to wear red, isn't there? Let's be honest.
Arsenal.
What else?
Sunderland.
No, I wasn't going to say Sunderland. Funny
Manchester United.
Keep going.
Liverpool, of course. Yeah.
So there's a few in red. We'll say that.
There is. Let us know. Me and Mark will be back next week, hopefully celebrating all 3 points for Newcastle United against Burnley. And then we build up to Bayer Leverkusen and, of course, Sunderland.
Bayer Leverkusen.
Okay, focus on the next game, which is Burnley, and then Bayer Leverkusen. Do hit like, do hit subscribe, get into the comments, and we'll see you guys very soon.